wishes to all my committee members, to Madam Secretary and everyone from the other subcommittee, to say I hope you and your family are doing as well as possible during these tough times, and that hoping that no one has been really sick in your family. I'm going to pass things off to our House Appropriations, Education, and Economic Development Subcommittee Chair, Delegate Barnes, to if there's any wishes from the Appropriations Committee, and then we'll get started and have former delegate, but Secretary Schultz speak to us. So delighted to have her here today. Delegate Barnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize to everyone. I think my computer needs an update and the camera's not working, so I'll just have to fly with.
You also have to speak up a little more.
Yeah, I'll just fly with audio only. Sorry about that. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being with us, Madam Secretary, Madam Chair. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, I guess that's all we have. We'll go with you, Secretary Schultz, and then everyone just raise your hand in the chat feature. Madam Secretary, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. It's great to see you, and it's great to see everybody else's faces. And it's even great to hear Delegate Barnes on the phone. So looking forward to this. I first want to just acknowledge that your teams in both committees had sent over several questions and items to respond to from the department's purposes. And I think we're going to touch on all of that in this presentation, but I do want to leave lots of time at the end for individual questions as they may arise. So if I don't touch on something in our presentation, please don't hesitate to ask me in the end to respond to something specific. But again, I'm very grateful to be here today. And yes, Madam Chair, our family is happy and healthy, and we're all doing really well. And I am sure that all of yours are as well. I do want to.
Can you speak louder, Madam Secretary? I don't know
yes.
if you can hear other people, but my volume's all the way up and I can't hear you that well.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hold my microphone a little closer to my head. Can you hear me a little bit better now? Okay. My computer audio does not work that great, so I'm using my headphones on my phone. So if this isn't good enough, then I'll try to switch to the other. But we can go on to slide 2. Great. So I wanted to start to talk a little bit about economic development generally, where we are and how it's evolving over the course of the pandemic. I've mentioned before on other calls and meetings with all of you that while commerce is usually focused on attracting new business to Maryland, retaining our current businesses and helping them grow, that is where we have always been. Since COVID-19 outbreak, our focus has shifted to sustaining Maryland's businesses. And that's a big shift for our Department of Commerce. But now more than ever, we're just trying to help to keep the doors open on a variety of businesses in a variety of different industries that we have not been, that we had not been accustomed to providing resources to in the past. The way people do business has changed. Video conferences like this, telework, and other social distancing measures are the new normal. Our sense of safety has changed, and consumer behavior has changed along with it. We're not comfortable at this point in time as a society going out the way that we used to. We don't want to visit or linger in crowded places. This put commerce into contact with many businesses that, like I said, we would not have usually have had contact or provided assistance to pre-COVID era. Retail stores, restaurants, personal services businesses, and others have used our emergency grant and loan programs. So they are now a part of our economic development world in Maryland in a way that they never had been before. So this is a part of the ongoing conversation that we're having also with our national economic development partner organizations as they also try to identify best practices and effective strategies. And what does economic development look like in the future, and how is it different from today? Next slide, please. But even amidst the changes and disruptions that we have seen, business is going on, and we're excited about that. We've worked with several companies over the last several months on location decisions and expansions in recent months. A couple of examples that we have here is Rada Technologies. They're a tactical radar developer, and they added 90 new jobs this year and moved into larger permanent space in Germantown. GenDX, a genomics company focused on ultra-rare genetic disorders. They're expanding into a new facility in Gaithersburg and adding 35 new jobs. Vision Technologies, they're a global wireless cyber and physical security company. They're adding 189 new jobs and expanding into a new headquarters and production facility in Glen Burnie. And we announced last week that Lytle is planning to add 10 new stores in Maryland and up to 400 new jobs by the end of next year, by the end of 2021. Our regional representatives across the state, you know many of them in your areas, your local jurisdictions. They're still in the field connecting with businesses, most of it virtually, but some of it is in person, and they have remained very, very busy over the course of the last 6 months. And many members of the Commerce team are now playing multiple roles and taking on new responsibilities, such as coordinating communications with our grant and loan applicants, reviewing application materials for those programs, and troubleshooting questions that applicants have about their forms, their qualifications, or in some ways make sure that their checks arrive safely through the comptroller and the treasurer's office. On top of all that we are continuing to do when it comes to our business development units, our marketing program remains very, very strong, and we are continuing to market Maryland as a great place to do business and to reach out to businesses and provide financial assistance. We did stop our marketing program, obviously, for a short period of time while we were in the height of the pandemic. We wanted to be sensitive to tourism and travel needs, but we continue now to go full force, and we'll talk about some of our marketing opportunities in the upcoming slides. Next slide. So Innovation Uncovered. This is a great program. We had intended on rolling out this great marketing plan at the beginning of the year, and obviously March happened, so we rolled it back a little bit. But we are moving forward this summer with this initiative, and we're really very excited about it. This is a way that we're going to be able to showcase and promote the most innovative startup companies from around Maryland, whether they've developed from a military installation, a federal lab, a university incubator, or from the minds of inspired entrepreneurs who might just be working in their basements or garages. So the centerpiece of this initiative really is to be able to make sure that the entire world knows that Maryland is the epicenter for everything innovation because of all of the resources that we have. And this is a very public way of putting Maryland in the front. So what we will do is we're conducting a search for the Maryland Future 20. And this is in which partners in the general public, and even you, the legislature, can nominate startup companies that they might think might be the next big thing in Maryland business. So you can go and nominate a business at our website at open.maryland.gov/innovation. And I encourage all of you to check it out. It's a really cool site that our marketing team did a fantastic job about putting that all together in the midst of the pandemic and getting it all finalized. But we will be announcing our Maryland Future 20 list in November. And we're promoting these innovative companies through social media, blog posts, and videos. And we're also encouraging our partners to share great innovative Maryland business stories using the hashtag Innovation Uncovered. That's clever. We could also use a little celebration of the great things in Maryland and what we're doing in businesses these days. And this is a really great and exciting way for us to, really just highlight what our best assets are in the state. Our business development team and our international team have been participating over the course of the last couple of months in numerous virtual conferences and trade shows. Obviously, out-of-town conferences and in-town conferences, those are not happening anywhere in the country at this point in time. So being able to participate on specific items is something that's really important to our team. That's been beneficial to continue to stay in the loop with that. The Maryland State Arts Council, they've worked with all of their partners to move events and exhibitions online. They have done a phenomenal job. They are very, very innovative over at the Arts Council, as you may imagine. And as the governor developed his plans for us to gradually reopen. Congratulations, everybody. We're in phase 3. As we came out of our lockdown measures, the Department of Commerce convened 13 industry advisory groups to consult with all of us and the governor's office so that we could talk about those unique challenges that different industries had and what that reopening strategy could be like and should be like, and so that we could develop some shared best practices for them. Slide 5, the next slide, is going to show us an example of what that Back to Business website looked like. I know that I've spoken with the legislature about this site before, but this is a great tool for both you and your constituents in your jurisdictions to be able to reference those safe best practices for reopening strategies for lots of different industries. All of these groups on here, as you can see, they're both in English and in Spanish. And if you go to that site, it gives you a really, really good indication of how businesses can practice safe opening procedures for their employees and for the general public. Also on the Back to Business site, there is a Back to Business pledge. And that is also linked on that Back to Business site, which really, if the business owner prints that out, signs it, places it in their place of employment. So it's a constant reminder of their commitment to the safety of everyone, whether it be their employees or the general public. Next slide, please. And this is another example of one of our other ad campaigns that we have, our public service announcements that are going out right now. Hopefully you have heard some of them, but we have the Masks on Maryland campaign, and it's been great because a couple of months ago we said everybody needs to wear masks, right? It's for the sake of ourselves, our own health, and our health of everybody that we meet out in the public space. But everybody needs to be talking about it. It can't just come from me. It can't just come from you. It can't just come from the governor. So we reached out to many of our friends in the community, such as Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. He recorded a spot for us, and his message was, we need to protect our flock, so masks on Maryland. Orioles manager Brandon Hyde, he also recorded a spot. We have some more that are coming out in the very near future, and we're really excited about that. The ongoing message that we're saying in our PSAs is only you can keep Maryland open for business, right? Our job is to get Maryland open. We want to stay open. We don't want to have to shut back down. So anything we can do through our marketing and our advertising of that. And if any of you want to be able to participate in that, we do have some hashtags. If you have your favorite mask that you wanted to share with the world, you can go to hashtag masks on Maryland or hashtag MD in focus or hashtag physical distancing, and those will be shared on our social media pages. So perhaps maybe the entire committee might want to do a Zoom call with everybody having their masks on, and we can put that out to the world. It might be kind of fun. Next slide, please. So here's all the numbers. We've talked about these numbers before, but these are updated for you from our small business relief grants and loans. The first slide that we have on this topic is just the grants, because there were, as you know, 2 rounds of funding that came into the grants. The first round was back in March, on March 23rd, and that was $50 million of CARES funds that went into the grant program. And then in July, the governor announced another $45 million to go into the grant program, which is exactly how it should have worked. We had talked about all of the applications that were sitting there in the first come, first served basis in order to be able to make sure that if there were additional funds, our newly built IT system and data processing system would have been ready to pick up very quickly and move them along. And that's exactly what happened. $95 million total in that grant process right now, up to $10,000. You can see here almost 10,000 businesses have been helped with those grants at this point in time. And you have the numbers and the breakdown that are there for you. We are still in the process of getting the actual checks out. The applications have been identified and they have been notified. So going to a new DocuSign system to get those application agreements or the grant agreements out to the applicants on a very fast basis really worked very, very well to make sure that the applicants knew that they were getting the information out and that they could very quickly electronically sign their documents and get them back to us. However, there is still that manual process of getting the checks out. So we're moving quickly with that, and we do have a slide coming up that will show you exactly how much is actually gone out via checks. Next slide, please. So the loan programs, similarly, we did not get additional funds for the second round for the loan programs. We have found that the grant programs are obviously more attractive to most of the small businesses that were looking for some immediate relief. But we did award that $75 million has been identified. We have a little over 1,600 businesses that have been granted the loans for up to $50,000. So that was kind of all over the board as to what the businesses were looking at as far as that goes. The manufacturing grants, I just want to touch on real quick. We had dedicated $5 million to the manufacturing grant fund, and it was created, as we talked about previously, in order to be able to quickly manufacture the PPE, masks, gowns, ventilator parts. And for those manufacturers who may not had already been manufacturing those, help them to purchase equipment or to train employees, something so that we could get some more Maryland-based manufacturing on those prior to. We had a great partnership with Maryland Manufacturing Extension and the Maryland Manufacturing Network that helped us to go through those applications. Those were applications that we really looked at the potential of the products that were going to be able to be produced. So that was much more of a very in-depth, subjective look at what those businesses were able to accomplish. And so we have approved $3.8 million of those funds at this point in time to those manufacturers who are going to be receiving those checks. And just there may be a question that the way that that system works is they get half of the money up front and then half of the money when they start to produce, and they have been doing some of those products moving forward. I'm really proud of our Maryland State Arts Council. I just want to say that, you know, they were very innovative. They did not get initial CARES funding in the initial round of funds, but they looked, they did get $500,000, I should say, from their national arts organization. So they got that, and then they looked around and in their budgets, and they pulled together roughly another $500,000, and they were able to provide emergency grants to 64 arts organizations and 61 independent artists. And that was really great. And we thought that that program worked so well that we funded them an additional, with the second round of funding, an additional $3 million, and they were able to split it up with $1 million for county arts agencies, which is very needed because county revenues are down just as state revenues are down. Some money that went towards the arts and entertainment districts, I think that was about $435,000. And then an additional $1.5 million for additional organizations and independent artists. And they really did a wonderful job putting that together. And I think they're going to get ready to announce those second round here pretty soon. And then there had been a lot of questions about what we were doing with economically disadvantaged small businesses in the state. And so it was really important for us to take some of the grants money in the second round. It was originally $50 million. I had requested that we take $5 million of that $50 million of the grant fund and put it towards the emergency funds for MSBIDFA, which many of you are familiar with. As you know, Meridian Management is managing that program, and they're looking to put out those loans, obviously very low interest and well-termed loans to those that may have had a very difficult time receiving any sort of funding in the past from different types of programs. We do hear that the response has been significant from Meridian Management, and they've received applications obviously far exceeding the $5 million. And we'll be working with them continuously to be able to check in on that program as well. Next slide, please. So this is what a lot of people have been asking for. So I said when we slowed down and we could kind of break out some of our data and have a chance to sit back and look at what we have, we would definitely want to share that. So we are sharing this with you now. with the understanding that we have the little disclaimer at the top of this graphic and on the next several graphics, that these are applications that have been funded as of August 21st. Obviously, there is there's a delay between when the approval process is and when the application gets back and gets accepted, and the contract and the agreement is all fully utilized. We want to make sure that you know that this is by no means the final submission. But these are the grants and loans that had been received by county, and you guys have these slides, so you're welcome to share them as you choose. I also want to say, for the record, the companies, the actual businesses, the applicants, they are posted on our Commerce website as well, so you can view all of the companies that get that funding. So I just want you to, just one second, I want you to know that those are updated every Monday. So every Monday, any business that has received a check and that's verified, new businesses are added every Monday. I just want to make sure everybody knows that there's no complete list that are out there at this point in time. Yes, I'll take a question.
Yeah, this is Delegate Barnes. Nice to see you, Madam Secretary.
Hi, Delegate.
Hey, we enjoy your presentations every year on EED. You're always so thorough, and this is a great presentation. We appreciate it. Before we move to the next slide, I do want to just zero in on this slide, because I think I do have a question. You know, I think we can agree that Prince George's County in particular was, if not the hardest, one of the hardest hit jurisdictions. I think that we can all agree with this crisis. And just by pure numbers, you know, it's 17 or 18% of the state population. And yet I look here and see that we only received, or the Prince George's only received, about 8% of the grants. So for a jurisdiction with, you know, so hard hit and with such a large population, I'm just trying to understand why only 8% flowed into Prince George's County, and what was the reasoning?
Well, all of the grants and the loans, they were processed on a first in, first out basis. So there was, and one of the reasons why it was, we were not able to get this data to you sooner was that we did not identify, while we were processing the grants or the loans, number one, which jurisdiction they were coming from, or what type of a business or industry that they were in. There was no qualifying factor other than they qualified to have a distressed company during the days of COVID.
So what proportion, and maybe you mentioned this, I don't know, what proportion of businesses applied but were turned down? Are there businesses out there that did not receive grants? So first in, first out.
Right, there's some that were denied, but many of them were denied because they did not have the proper materials of submission. But even them, they probably wouldn't have been denied, because we quickly put together a team of people in order to be able to help to reconcile those. And so there were businesses that our team was working on, which was one of the reasons why it took so long to process these when it was happening. Which we had explained, that we wanted to make sure that all of those businesses that had the ability to get the correct documentation, we were walking them through that correct documentation. So there's very, very few people that were actually denied. There were applications that were sent in that were duplicate applications. And so if there were duplicate applications, then of course that was another long, lengthy process where we had to go through and, pardon the term, but we had to dedupe all of the entire 30,000 applications that came in to be able to kind of limit the duplicate checks that could possibly go out.
All right, and last part of this question, your outreach to businesses, what level was that, and was that done uniformly across the state, or how did you let businesses know that these grants were available and get that information to them?
Yeah, well, I'll say outreach was, I guess, one of our biggest strengths at the time, because we were in very high demand. As of March 23rd, when the programs were announced, in a matter of just a couple of months, I did over 100 outreach events. Events like this, some of you on the phone had me present at your local town hall meetings and community organizations. And so it was me. It was getting information out to the news media. It was different, our local jurisdiction, our representatives, our regional representatives that were out there. We also have a minority business outreach director that had been doing outreach as well. Based on the number of applications that we received in the first few days, I would say that there was pretty good understanding that these relief programs were out there.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
You're welcome, sir.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. Please continue.
So these are going to be evolving. So this, and we can move on to the next as well. So many people have asked about the industry slides. These are the industry sectors. Again, this is as of August 21st. It's interesting data. Right now, it's just data. We do have a wonderful economist at the Department of Commerce who has been breaking down a lot of the data, not only from these types of programs, but from other statewide programs and national programs, unemployment numbers. And, you know, hopefully we'll be able to share some more conclusive information about what we see with that. But I think this is good information for everybody to see. We can move on to the next slide. Again, this is just additional, yeah, I agree. Okay, so one was a grant and one was a loan industry slide. So this is the demographic slide that so many of you had asked to see. What I think is a very, very important number is the number at the very bottom of the page. It's the did not answer the question number. And this was my I guess, feeling very leery about sharing this information because so many people that filled out the application did not answer because they were not, you did not have to answer the question as to what your demographic group was on the application. Many, many, many of them did not. And so the information that we have right now, based on those that did answer the question, are the numbers that you see here. This slide is specifically for the grant, and the next slide will be from the loans. You can see that the minority groups have roughly 29.4% right now, as we know, for the grants, and about a little over 50% female ownership participation. What I do want to say, because we know that this data at some point in time is going to be very helpful, both on this slide and on the slides for the loans, is that we do plan on, once all of the checks are dispersed, to send out, which is something that Commerce has customarily done in the past, to our business community, to all of our applicants that have received funds from the Department of Commerce. We're going to be sending out a survey with a longer list of questions. And we think that once the applicants have received the funds, they'll be more likely to fill out some additional questions for our survey so we can go back and we can do a little bit more analysis on that. I just wanted to see if anybody had any question on this slide, and we can go to the next slide, and that will illustrate the loan percentages as well. Again, you can see on this slide, even those with the loans, probably a similar percentage of those applicants did not identify themselves in any demographic category. Okay, next slide. So how did we do all this? With a little bit of magic and a whole lot of hard work from an awful lot of people, both at the Department of Commerce and many other agencies, as we had to, build a complete new IT system. We learned that after the first 2 days when received thousands and thousands that would not work through the Commerce workflow. We did that with the help of the Department of Information Technology, so we're grateful for being able to use one of their existing vendors. So that was good. We did not have to waste any time moving forward with that. And we developed the system, we developed the workflow process, we developed the organization, and then we said, all right, so now we're going to need some more people just in order to be able to handle the volume. So there were about 150 additional staffers from other state agencies that came over to Commerce virtually, most of them, of course, to help us run the program. their expertise in what they were doing in their individual jobs at the other agencies, they used that expertise in order to be able to help us. Some that didn't have accounting expertise or any budgetary expertise, any banking, I guess, qualifiers to be able to look at contracts and financial documents, they were able to help us with a lot of the initial reviews, which were very helpful as well. We also established 2 new customer service email addresses that were dedicated solely to answering questions, thousands and thousands of questions from our grant and loan applicants and other COVID-related questions. Some of you have also used that, and that was the secretary.commerce at maryland.gov email address, which people are still using today and asking us about reopening. And then the COVID-19 email address where people were asking specifically about the process in which their grants or loan was in. And I think that we have gotten a lot of good feedback, because with that, we didn't just use the commerce team to answer those questions, but if any business had any question about any business related item, we had representatives of SDAT and Department of Labor and DHCD and the Department of Health there to be able to assist us in addressing those questions pretty quickly. Next slide, please. So now, moving through, to our, economic recovery, we all know that this is a really important aspect of where we are. We are at September 2nd right now, and I don't think any of us realized that we would be in this position for this long of a period of time, but we are. But we're moving forward, and I explained to you a little earlier about those businesses that are still looking to us for site selection. There's many, many, many more than what we presented on the slide. Most of them confidential that we can't actually talk about. But I think it's important for us to be able to understand where we are. 7.6 unemployment rate right now. That's below the national average, which is around 10.2%. We are the lowest in the Mid-Atlantic region. We saw a 2.1% job growth in July, the 7th best job rate growth in the country. Particularly strong, obviously, with leisure and hospitality sectors as we open up our hospitality and our tourism world and making sure that we get back to where we were with that. Again, our in-house economist notes that Maryland's unemployment rate fell. Well, our labor force grew in July. That's great. The national rate fell while the labor rate contracted. So Maryland is on a different trend than the nation at this point in time. Some would say, my economist has said, that a lot of it has to do not only with just Marylanders returning to work, but it's because we did it in a more stable way than some other states have done. And we want to make sure that we continue to work and work continues to stay open. Thus, as we said, our Masks on Maryland campaign. And we want to take it slow, and we want to take it steady, and we want to take it safely. Next slide, please. So we offered a very aggressive response to provide, a lot of help to businesses during the crisis. It was a really great response. We were asked, how does it really relate back to the Great Recession of, between the dates of 2008 and 2010? What I'll just say about this, and we can have some more conversation together, but it was a very different type of action that we had. We had an immediate hit to the economy in this year, very, very immediate. In the Great Recession, 2000, actually started 2007 and in 2008, it really was a slow progression, and it was every day, for a course of a couple of years, you just started hearing really bad news until we got to the point where, we hit the pinnacle. I believe now we are right beneath the highest level of unemployment that we were in the Great Recession. So our 7.6, we've now gotten below that high point for the Great Recession. And we did this big giant turnaround, from start to finish from March to September. And it's at more of a warped speed. So I think, going back and looking at this, there's very little to compare it to with that period of time. But I will say that as time goes on, we're all going to have lots to compare to, and we're also going to have lots to be able to address as far as things that, you know, could be done different in the future. What I'm really excited about is that in short periods of time, when people have identified that there were bumps in the road, they looked on how to take a different road. And when we found that the process was running too slowly and we stayed up all night long trying to figure that out, we said, okay, we're going to do a different process. We're going to do this process, and we're going to do the DocuSign process, and we're going to do, you know, a shortened review process. And being able to very quickly shift into different ways of doing things is not necessarily something that you identify with government entities. But I will say that I think that the team that I have been working with so wonderfully, and I've been blessed to have them, they've been able to do that at warp speed, and I'm really proud of them for that. And I think that we're going to continue to shift as we move forward. Just wanted to also point out, we talked about the number of businesses that are being helped, and none of this could have been done. And I know that there was, we got a lot of support from the federal government through the CARES Act. Congress was very good and very swift in passing a couple of key pieces of legislation to help out all of the states. But their PPP, their EIDL, all of those programs that came through the SBA, they had as many or more problems as we did in Maryland with acting quickly. But I want to just point out this number to you, and I think it's a significant number, that altogether between the federal programs and our state programs, we've been able to help over 257,000 transactions, right? So many of those transactions were multiple transactions per business, but those businesses were able to get the help that they needed in order to keep their business open and their people employed. And that's $13.6 billion worth of assistance that's come into the business community. So I think that's something for all of us to look back on and just think about how we would replicate that again in the future or not. But to be able to say, this is where we were, this is what we were able to accomplish, and you know, what might we need to do in the future in order to be able to modify, but to be able to continue to assist the businesses. And with that, Madam Chair, I will roll it to you and your wonderful committees.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary. I do know there's a couple questions lined up, but I did want to ask one first, if I could. And I really liked what you mentioned on the last slide, the comparisons to the Great Recession, and certainly how they came to hit us very differently. But related to that, were there any lessons that you all learned from the last recession in terms of serving people and all these programs, and anything that we in the legislature can do to help facilitate that recovery?
Yeah, you know, over the course of the last couple of months, and we've had conversations also last year, I think that we need to continue to have those conversations about where, what does that portfolio look like? And I kind of mentioned it at the beginning, economic developers, state economic developers across the country have not historically worked with restaurants and retailers, right? The rate of return that the state gets from our investments are typically, and have always been, to the high-tech firms, right? So those industries that are illustrated in our strategic plan that all of you have, which is cybersecurity, biohealth, manufacturing, aerospace, you know, the defense industry, agriculture, right? So that's who we focus on in order to be able to bring economic growth and wealth to the state. I think what we realize here is that all of those other industries also have an economic impact on the state of Maryland. And we collectively need to be able to look to see what that means for economic development. I'm involved in a work group with SEED. It's a state economic development executives organization. And we're looking at these issues. And I think that we have to be very legitimate and very just slow in being able to identify where those opportunities are. I think just sitting back and really studying it for a period of time to be able to see how we can help to identify where those state investment dollars are going to go and how they are spent is going to be a really good topic for us in the coming months.
Thank you very much. Delegate Wilkins has a question.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and hello, Secretary Schultz. Great to see you. Hello. Thank you for this presentation and for the information. I wasn't thinking about this before the presentation, but as you were presenting and talking about sustaining businesses and all of the efforts and programs around businesses, especially during COVID-19, it actually reminded me that both committees, Appropriations Committee and Ways and Means, worked really, really hard this 2020 session to ensure that there are funds in the budget for businesses that were already struggling before COVID-19 related to the Purple Line construction. And so with Prince George's County and Montgomery County being two of the hardest hit jurisdictions around COVID-19, and that the fact that these businesses had already really been facing, basically just hanging on when it comes to being able to survive during the construction, we have about $2 million that's literally sitting there to be spent to help sustain these businesses. And just given what we are talking about regarding business sustainment, given that what we are talking about regarding COVID-19 impact, it really just made me wonder and want to inquire about this priority for these jurisdictions and where we are in terms of making sure that these funds that have been allocated get into the hands of these businesses that are struggling, that we could, hundreds of businesses that we could help save along that corridor.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Delegate, and I'm happy to work with my team in your office to get back with some identified projects and a path moving forward for that. Absolutely.
So we can, wonderful. So are you saying we'll work together on some kind of plan and make sure that those funds that we've allocated are getting to the hands of the businesses that need them?
Well, I'm going to have to say, I don't know where it is in the budget cycle right now. There was a big giant BPW meeting that happened in July. So I just want to go back and make sure that all of the funds that have been allocated are still there, and to do a little bit of research into that to be able to make sure that we can look to develop a plan for that.
Wonderful. Well, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate.
I think Vice Chair Solomon has a question.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, and thank you, Chair Kaiser, for convening the hearing. Madam Secretary, it's great to see you. I just wanted to start off by thanking you and your staff for being so responsive, especially earlier on, a lot of the issues that we've been working with in Montgomery County, and for being really willing to dive into the childcare issues that we've been dealing with. So just wanted to say thank you for that. And unsurprisingly, that is where my question is going to go. And I appreciate your staff. I had a great conversation with Jen Lahat earlier this week, and I appreciate again her willingness to work with us through it. So I've been working really closely with my colleague Delegate Ebersol, who I think is going to have a couple other questions sort of on more specific data. But I know one of the issues we talked about earlier this spring, and unfortunately we really haven't gotten any kind of a resolution from MSDE, and frankly, I think a lot of the childcare providers in the state sort of feel, I think, abandoned in the sense of additional fiscal support. So we're at a point where obviously, I love this phrase, childcare is the workforce behind the workforce. If we want to reopen our economy and get Marylanders back to work, especially with our schools being virtual, we have to make sure that there's a safe place for kids to be. And even though we've got, I think it's something of 70% of our childcare centers are reopened, they're reopened in a very limited capacity. I was talking to one organization earlier last week, and they told the story of a provider that is a STARS level 5. Or Excels level, one of the best rated in Maryland. They did have one small case of COVID with a staff person that was caught immediately. They had to close for 2 weeks. They did the deep cleaning, and when they reopened, they lost 70 to 80% of their enrolled students. Parents just didn't want to send them back. And this is a center that's been open for 15 or 20 years. They're on the verge of going bankrupt, and those are not the kind of facilities that we want to lose. So I guess I'm wondering, I would sort of plead with you to think creatively and work with MSDE to look at trying to provide some sort of funding, absent of the education dollars, which we would love to be made available, but something from the business side to make sure that, we have a childcare community that's robust and ready to go when we reopen. Obviously a lot of these are owned by women or minorities. They're very small businesses operating already on the margin. So maybe there's some existing pots of money that we might have available already that we could shift more of a focus on towards childcare. Or if there's anything we could do going forward, just would love your thoughts on that, and if there's anything we can do to make that happen.
Right. And Delegate, and thank you. And you have been very, very helpful with our office to be able to understand your concerns. And I appreciate your willingness to work reasonably with our team and providing, what your sentiment is on this. So thank you for that. Obviously, a child care center is a business, so they would have been eligible to apply for any of our other programs, right? So, and I don't know, I can go back and look on the industry list, and so it's very possible that many child care centers did apply for a grant or a loan, obviously if they're in good standing with the state and all of those other eligibility requirements. But we all know that MSDE regulates child care centers, and the Department of Commerce can't help to reopen them until there is another type of a review by MSDE. I can say that we have worked very closely with MSDE. I've also worked very closely with the governor's office. The governor does consider this to be one of his top priorities. He does know that getting parents back to work by getting children back into child care centers is a priority. And now that we're in phase 3, I think that we can all look at the several different ways in which we can slowly grow into the completion of phase 3. And that's where we are. And I will say it's at the top of all of our lists of looking for a way in order to be able to resolve those issues.
Thank you. I would just point to, I know a couple of counties have stepped up to provide some support. Montgomery County put $10 million into a provider assistance fund, but our county's out of money, and it's a drop in the bucket, especially for a lot of the bigger providers who may have multiple centers. And I know there are a lot of counties around the state that don't have the fiscal ability to do that. So we've been pushing MSDE to do a program similar to that, and we haven't gotten anywhere. So thanks again.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Next question we have is Delegate Smith.
It'd be helpful if I unmuted myself. Thank you, Madam. Oh, okay. And thank you, Chairman Barnes. And also thank you, Secretary Schultz. I'm sorry for being a bit tardy, but I was able to review the slides that were sent in advance, so that's greatly appreciated. And I have a lot of, sympathies, because even at the city level, a lot of the economic development officials don't always necessarily work with the same type of businesses that you noted that are, really needing a lot of assistance from your agency. So it's a learning curve, I think, at other levels, of government about how to support these particular businesses. So thank you for the expansion into some of these new places. I wanted to back up to some of the data points you shared about how Maryland has some good news, right? Some bright spots that despite the fact that this is a lot higher unemployment rates than we would want, it could be, it could be more challenging in some of our neighboring states and other parts of the country. I think we know that when you go even closer at the county and city level, Baltimore City obviously still has a rate of unemployment that's more akin to the national, I think, average that you pointed out. So, any areas that were challenged pre-COVID are also going to be continuously further challenged during it. I wanted to know if, looking at that data, are you also kind of looking at it at a more granular level, particularly as it pertains to communities of color that traditionally across America have always experienced a higher rate of unemployment than other groups, particularly white residents, for a variety of factors? Because I'm wondering, is there opportunity around manufacturing of PPE or other things that could be done kind of locally that are not necessarily high tech, but there is a need for it? I understand just from my day job, the price of plexiglass has gone up because so many people need it that previously we're not thinking about plexiglass. And I'm sure the installation of that is something that maybe might not take a lot of training, but you get where I'm going with this. Are there any identified opportunities for where some areas that had maybe more acute challenges around unemployment, where we can look at some light manufacturing opportunities as being kind of a next step to stabilizing. I didn't know if that was something that was on your agenda.
Sure. So I'll take the jurisdictional unemployment first. When we were at the height of our shutdowns, the highest unemployment was in Worcester and Garrett counties, for obvious reasons, right? I mean, they are all based on the tourism industry and hospitality and leisure. So they still remain at the higher levels of our unemployment rates. When we get to some of the urban areas, it's around where some of the national averages are, but Maryland still as a whole is really seeing good numbers when it comes to that. Obviously, we're looking at everything we can with the production of PPE, the manufacturing jobs that are out there for all of the communities. The $3.8 million that we put into the manufacturing grant was a great start for that. And I know that they are hiring additional people, and we have the complete list that's posted on our website if you want to look to see what those companies are and what parts of the state that they're in and that are doing those types of efforts. But I think that this is definitely going to present some opportunities, and I'll say it as that. It's going to be opportunities for those that are quick-minded, those that are innovators. We talked a little bit about innovation earlier today. I think that I have seen, and I'm sure many of you have seen in your local jurisdictions, you have seen some of those people that have come out of this, and they'll say that they're better off today than they were in 2019. And those that are being very innovative and they're changing ways and they're looking for those really cool kind of niche ways that they can work through the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of that. And we're working to help to support them and to promote them as much as we possibly can. And I invite all of you to look for them in your communities as well, because there's some intriguing stories out there. Even in the restaurant industry, I have heard from some restaurants. I did a small tour of the Eastern Shore a couple weeks ago. There was one that said that they have no plans to reopen indoor dining at this point in time because they've made so much more with carry out and delivery and with this new different way that they're working with their community, that it's not cost effective for them to have indoor dining. Right. So I think what we're seeing is it's not the new normal. It's an expansion of opportunities where people have creative juices that are flowing in order to be able to take advantage of the situation that they're in.
Thank you. The next, I only see one question. So if anyone else has a question, get in the queue now. Delegate Feldmark with a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary. I have a couple of questions, and the first is dealing with the data breakdown that you provided for the grants and the loans. And first of all, thank you. It's really helpful to see this data, and I know that you all had to kind of go back after the fact to provide it, but we really do appreciate it. And I guess my question really is about who else is left. Okay, so in terms of applicants, businesses that qualified, but there just wasn't enough funding to go around. Like what does that queue look like?
So I can go back and I can look at specific numbers for you, Delegate, and I can get those specifics and obviously report back. But I think we had about 20,000 grant applications, a little over 20,000 that had originally applied, and we have roughly funded a little over 9,000. So we can do the math on that. Some of them take out a couple of hundred that may have been duplicates, or some people may have denied the grants. And by the way, some people, when we're reaching out to say that your grant is available to you now, they will deny it for a multitude of reasons, whether they're back up and running and they don't need it again, or some people have denied it and said, no, I just don't need it, give it to somebody else. Or some businesses have gone out of business and they have self-identified that way and said that they want the money to go to someone else. So that again is part of the process of getting the final checks out, is getting the businesses to agree to actually take the money. I can say, and I don't know what you all are hearing on your end. I know that there is obviously still some, considerable financial concerns but I don't have people filling up my email boxes at this point in time saying, I need money right now. When we looked at the last slide that talked about, you know, the 257,000 businesses that are out there, or business transactions that have occurred with multiple businesses, I think a lot of people have received funding. So with, let's just say there's an additional 10,000 businesses that are in our grant process right now that are waiting to see if there's additional funds. If there are additional funds, we can certainly do that. What I did not touch on is that there's additional, those businesses that were able to apply, the 501c3s, those nonprofits. We took all of those nonprofits, every nonprofit that have filed through our first round, and we funded them with the funding that DHCD received through the CARES Act from that second round of funding. So there was around $6 million that we gave for whatever those nonprofits asked for. I know that that's a big issue for some people in your community to make sure that those nonprofits have that funding. So we're doing what we can. We opened up a couple of weeks ago, you may have seen a new round of funding for 501c6s, because many of your chambers of commerce are 501c6s, and they were not eligible for the 501c3 program that the DHCD had put forth. So we opened up an additional round of funds from them, and we barely received any applications. And a lot of them are saying that their members have rebounded, so their members are paying their dues and moving forward. I think where we're going to see some of the issues is, I think, continuing in that hospitality and tourism type of areas. We're now starting to see some of, you know, the larger hotels, for example, that are having considerable difficulties, and something that's going to be a difficult rebound, and that's not something that my $10,000 grant program is going to be able to assist. Does that make any sense?
Right. Yeah, thank you. And so if you can follow up with additional data on that, that would be really helpful to see, but I understand what you're saying, that there are a lot of different variables that go into it. The other specific question I had was in the breakdown by industry. One of the categories is real estate and rental and leasing, which I'm assuming based on the categories that would include both commercial leasing and residential rentals. Is that correct?
I'm assuming that it would. I mean, that's an overall NAICS code that goes into that industry category.
Okay. Well, I think it would be helpful if you can, and I don't expect you to have this off the top of your head, but if you can provide some breakdown of commercial versus residential businesses in that category, because as we look at the rental housing crisis, I think we recognize that landlords need to be partners in that, and understanding what business assistance is going to residential property owners. That would be really helpful if you can just provide that as follow-up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure as well, Delegate, that you have received, that you do have access to the complete list of the businesses that have received their grants and loans.
So yes, I just didn't know if you had a further breakdown. I mean,
Okay.
through all of them to look for things that look like residential property managers.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
We can see what we can find for you with that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I'm looking at the participant list and I'm not seeing any hands raised. Not everyone is good at the Zoom hand raising feature. I've gotten texts from people, but they've all been taken care of as well. I just want to make sure if there's, before we sign off, if there's anyone else who has a question. So just trying to look around the room, see the people who are showing their videos. So it looks like that's it. We certainly appreciate your availability today, your openness, all the data and the information you'll be giving us from some of the questions today. And I think a great practice that giving the PowerPoint in advance. So Delegate Smith and so many others, I'm seeing some nodding heads of the people who really took a deep dive look at it so they could be prepared. So that really helped. So I think we'll probably ask for that in the future. But I want to Thank you, Madam Secretary, and pass it off to Ben Barnes, Chair of the EED Subcommittee.
All right. Thank you, Madam Secretary. It's certainly informative. Thank you, Madam Chair, for doing this jointly. I think that there's some economies of scale there that were very helpful. And thank you to all the members.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.